One of the most persistent myths in leadership is the idea that great leaders are simply born with the right stuff, that some people naturally have the instincts, judgment, and talent that others don't. But research suggests something completely different, that leadership capability is built through experience, through difficult assignments, setbacks, and moments where the stakes are high and the path forward is not obvious. And this matters because many organizations still hire and promote based mostly on resumes and past achievements, when the real question should be, what experiences shaped this person and what did they learn from them? Today, we're going to explore that idea and several others that challenge how we think about leadership, integrity, culture, and what it really means to live a meaningful life. Today, I'm once again joined by someone whose story perfectly embodies the principle she writes about. Karen Dillon, the former editor of Harvard Business Review, who walked away from one of the most prestigious positions in business publishing to completely recalibrate her life. It was the spring of 2010. Karen was sitting with Clayton Christensen at his Harvard office, focused on filling a magazine deadline. An hour and a half later, she walked out focused on her life. She went on to co author four transformative books with Clay, including the New York Times bestseller, How Will You Measure Your Life, which applies rigorous business theory to the most important questions that we face as individuals. We start today's conversation on a proven way that builds resilience in younger generations. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Welcome to the Good Leadership Podcast, where we explore the stories, strategies, and insights of thought leaders who inspire us to think differently and lead better. Through candid conversations and expert perspectives, we dive into the challenges, breakthroughs, and practical lessons that shape exceptional leadership. You state it's really important for children to face real challenges and solve hard problems themselves. Why is that the case?
I think it's really important and it's really hard as parents. But the reality is, as our instinct as parents is so often to step in to help them to solve the problem for them because we love them so much. We don't want them to be up until 2 in the morning because they didn't get this started on that report. So maybe we can help them. And maybe we think it's more important for them to have a good night's sleep and go into the school day tomorrow rested than it is for them to sort of face the consequences and maybe a poor grade for the report because we love them. And so these things we do because we love our children so much and because we want to help them so much and we see them struggling with things are actually really powerful lessons for them that you don't really want to be giving them. You're teaching your children that mom will come to the rescue and solve my problem so I don't have to plan better next time. Mom will talk to the teacher and make sure that I get extra days on the assignment because so I don't have to worry about thinking about that. I can outsource my problem solving. And more importantly, you're not really teaching them what they're capable of. You're not teaching them to become self-reliant. And again, if we all do it. It is a struggle. And I know of many examples from my own life with my own kids. But if you start when they're young and you kind of continually help them, you are really presenting them with a path that involves other people solving their problems for them. And I would honestly say there's no better time to have your kids learn from failure than when they're young, because so many high achievers, this is what we talk about in the book, had such a clear path of success for so long in their life that when they finally come to a real setback in a career or in college or at some point later in their life, they have not built any resilient muscles. They don't know how to pick themselves up from a setback. They don't know how to regroup and try again. They don't know how to go talk to a professor and ask if there's some way they could learn differently or better. We haven't given them those tools or those skills. Fighting our own instincts to step in and solve everything for our problems so our kids never feel bad about themselves is not actually giving them the gift you want to be giving them in the long run.
And I've heard that as well from one of my mentors who said that a string of successes by someone that's young is probably one of the most damaging things that could happen, because when setbacks happen, eventually they'll not be winning at everything in life. They're not going to know how to deal with it. They're not going to have, like you said, that resilience that they need to overcome that and to adapt. And you don't want that to happen to your child. But like you said, it's so difficult as a parent. A lot of helicopter parents just want to just come in and fix everything for them. But the challenges your children face serve an important purpose. They will help them hone and develop these capabilities necessary to succeed throughout their lives if they can learn these lessons earlier in life rather than later.
I completely agree. And it's really hard. I'm saying that as a fellow parent, it is really hard. But I really believe that resilience is one of the most underdeveloped skills in younger people now. And you're giving them a gift by helping them develop resilience, even if it's a bad grade for, in an elementary school project, or it's a lesson that they have to take a course over in college. Those things teach them something about themselves and their ability to overcome something really challenging. And it's really powerful. I still will tell you to this day, one of my most important courses at college was one of the ones I struggled most with. And I didn't get an amazing grade, but I learned that even when something's really hard, I can apply myself and pull myself up from a not really terrible grade. And it's a powerful lesson. I'm not proud of the grade, I'm proud of the experience, and I'm proud that I learned something about myself. You want to help your kids have those lessons too.
Well, let's move to a few more of these models. There's so many great models in this book. I'd like to unpack a few more. The next one I'd like to focus on is McCall's theory that gives a causal explanation that completely revolutionizes how we really should think about leadership development. Because that traditional right stuff model assumes that the top candidates achieved what they did because of innate talent. McCall's thinking turns this on its head. So, how can we use this type of school of experience to challenge the traditional belief that great leaders are born with the right stuff?
We sort of look at a person on a piece of paper and we look at the things that we think suggest they are smart or, a cut above, or they've come from the right pedigree in some way, and we make assumptions that those people will be best in the positions we want them to grow in. But we never think about, are they prepared for the specific experiences that this position will require them to grow in. And so McCall's theory is a very interesting one, which is that it doesn't have to be your schools, your pedigree, did you go to Harvard or not? It should be your schools of experience that lead you to becoming better at, again, in context, different jobs, different challenges, different growth opportunities. And so as a leadership development practice, instead of simply assuming people have the right pedigree that impresses everybody, it's back to the hygiene factors, right? Do you sound impressive on paper? You look at, have they had a series of experience? Have they ever had to deal with a startup with a small budget? That might be a very different experience that someone's been given managing a product or service that way compared to someone who came from an extremely well-resourced organization that had spans and layers of support and buy-in and big marketing budgets. That person may be terrible in a true startup environment, and the startup environment person may not be good at navigating the bureaucracy of a big environment. So you can actually manufacture opportunities for them to go to those schools of experience, to have those experiences. Sometimes it might be an assignment in what seems like an unglamorous remote outpost, but we'll actually teach them about market development or managing cross-cultural employees. And it may not sound as prestigious to get the assignment up, in some cold part of Canada, but it may be a really valuable opportunity to see how somebody, for example, shines when they're combining cultures and still have high productivity expectations, et cetera. And as individuals, we can do that for ourselves. You can say to yourself, what experiences, what things do I need to be good at to eventually get to the position I want to be in? And it's not just the pedigree that looks impressive when someone's hiring that maybe an AI search would scan for, but it's something that will help me really understand the challenges that one would need to be a great CEO in a global environment. What things do I need to choose to be good at it? So you can choose to try to get yourself in those schools of experience, or as a leadership development part of an organization, think about consciously giving people those experiences that may not be as prestigious and sort of seemingly good on paper, but really develop people in different ways.
And this means when we hire people or promote based solely on resumes or past achievements, we're biasing ourselves toward resources over processes. And the question isn't just what someone has accomplished, but what experiences shape them and what they have learned from those experiences. Which brings me to my next question about what strategies can organizations or parents use to deliberately create the kinds of challenges or experiences that develop true capability?
Well, even thinking about the capabilities, right? What capabilities, as a parent, what capabilities do I want my kid to have? And you can try to manufacture experiences that help them do that. Do I want my kid to be self sufficient when they go off into the world? Yes. So maybe I need to develop the capability in my kid of once a week, they plan the dinner. We do it together, but we give them the capability of actually making food for other people. Or do I want them to be able to navigate a city on their own? How can I manufacture that experience in a safe way that allows them to do that? You can do the same thing with employees. I want the people who I think are going to thrive as high potentials here to be able to work in different cultures. That's going to be important here. So, how do I manufacture those experiences? Maybe it's not an overseas assignment, but maybe it's managing a project that includes people from different time zones and different experiences with some mentorship. If you think about the capabilities that make someone thrive in that job, and you probably have good comparisons of people who do thrive in the job, and think about what schools of experience did those people have or go to, then you can start to create opportunities for other people to gain those experiences as well.
And there's a story of Nolan Archibald who had a clear goal of becoming a CEO, but he asked himself, what are all those experiences and problems that I have to learn about and master so that I have what it takes to become a CEO when it happens? So that's a great way of just asking the right questions beforehand so you're more deliberate in your strategy and can really hopefully foster those experiences that's going to help you achieve your goal.
That's a great example because he took some assignments that were not glamorous sounding at all. It would not have looked like he was on the high potential track in his organization, but it gave him some really valuable schools of experience. And he became, at the time, the youngest Fortune 500 CEO of anyone. And it was because he had clearly developed the kinds of experiences, not to try to impress people, to say, look at the hard things I've done. It's because it actually built his skills. That's the point about this. It's not just to put different things on your resume. They are good talking points, but it's more that you actually are going to be good at the things that this growth opportunity is going to require of you. You get reps in the kinds of experiences that will help you succeed in that job or that position or in that growth opportunity. And the more reps you get in, the better you're going to be when your big moment comes.
Let's talk about culture. And culture is that unique combination of processes and priorities within an organization or a family. Culture is also one of the most powerful tools we have to close the gap between where we want to be and where we are right now. How can you be more deliberate in designing a culture? And let's speak to it at a personal level for a family culture, let's say, instead of letting one just simply emerge on its own. Because I see that a lot with relationships with families. There's no deliberate strategy there or culture that they want to support. It just kind of develops organically.
Organically or in a way that it's because no one ever sort of dared to push back on it. It's an interesting observation. The idea is that culture is formed in how we solve problems together, solve challenges together in companies and in families. So the culture is not what you say it is. It's not casual Fridays and we promote from within. It's what do we learn about what we prioritize as an organization by how we choose to solve problems together, meaning do we cut a corner on certain customers? Do we only allow junior people to do certain kinds of work because we don't trust them to do other things? The decisions you're making to solve challenges or problems are beginning to form your culture. It's from an MIT academic called Edgar Schein, very influential thinking. Clay's thinking is that that's same is true in our families too. If we don't choose to solve problems in a particular way, the culture is going to emerge. It's going to emerge from however we're acting on a day-to-day basis, but it may not be the one you want. And I speak again as a parent who struggled with this over many times over the years. You can choose to solve problems the easy way, which is just let my kid do X or Y, or fine, you don't have to eat the dinner the way that we made tonight. We'll cope with it in some other way, or fine, you don't have to go to so and so's birthday party because it's easier for us. But what you're doing every time you're making a decision that's not something you actually wish the family culture were, but you're just letting it happen, your culture is being built by those choices and those decisions about how you solve challenges together in your family. And it's just a simple idea, really, that every family would wish to have a culture that they're proud of. Whatever your version, everyone's version will be different. Are we a culture of we care about our community? Are we a culture of our family is the most important things in all of our lives or not? And you're allowing that culture to be built or not be built by the everyday decisions you make in the family for solving challenges and problems together. And until you think about it and actively choose as parents, as a family, what do we want our culture to be? So it's again another thing for tired parents to think about, but the importance of it is really powerful. Is do I want our culture to be cut corners, or it's okay to be mean to people, or it's okay to be rude to teachers, or whatever it is? And every time you let something go, you're sort of sinking that into your culture, and it's very hard to change culture once it's set in.
Well, and that's a critical insight. Works for business as well as families. If you don't articulate a culture or articulate one but don't enforce it, then a culture is going to emerge. It may not be the one that you want. However, it's going to be based on those processes and priorities that have been repeated and have worked. So culture can be built consciously or it can evolve inadvertently, and that's usually not the preferred choice. And cultures in any organization, they're formed through repetition. But if you want your family to have a culture with clear priorities for everyone to follow, then those priorities really need to be based on values. And there's values in organizations, there's values in families. How can parents and organizations reinforce values that they want to be adopted when it's especially easy to overlook small lapses where you say you want this value, but it's not being shown and you just kind of forgive and forget instead of trying to reinforce certain values? Is there a good process to really get these values in place and to get them to stick?
It's important to know what those values are to start with, right? What are we aiming against? What's our North Star? Until you've even thought about and articulated and shared and reiterated and communicated, all those things have to happen because otherwise your sense of the values of our organization may be different than mine. And we're both trying to do good things, but we may be competing with each other in some way. Your values might be that we create the highest quality product for our customers all the time, and no matter what the cost. And my values might be we want to make sure that our employees have a place to grow and that they are prioritized. I understand that. And they may be conflicting sometimes. And if we don't talk about that, what are our values? What is our North Star? That's step number one. Leaders have an important, really important responsibility to model the values, to show decision making, even when it's hard sometimes, that reinforces the values, whether that's in an organization or in a family. And I just think you cannot reinforce it enough. And as parents, you can easily demonstrate we are not buying a fancy car like some of your friends have in this family or a new car because we value saving our money for your education. It's just something we want to talk about. And then we're going to put our money where our mouth is when it's time for your education. If you, as a parent and as in an organization, you connect the dots for people, how the decisions and choices you're making or they're making connect to your values, you have a much greater chance of those values guiding other people's decisions too. It's a clarity of communication, clarity of intent, clarity of modeling. Believe that most people are good people trying to do the right thing. Things can be done at cross purpose or without a recognition of how powerful that value is in an organization. If you think things apply to everybody but the leader or everybody but the leader's buddies, then you have conveyed something about the values. The values are not universal. The values are for employees, but there's a different set of values for the people at top. Do you mean to convey that? If you don't, then you have to rethink that as a leader about what messages you're conveying. Back to the priorities and the decisions you make in your resource allocations. Your values should be reflected in how employees spend their time, the company's resources, their personal energy, what their priorities are, that those should be synced up. And if it's not, then whatever your values are, they're not being executed. My dad had a slogan growing up that he got in the army. He was called Can Do Dillon because can do. We're can do. He could get it done. And that's stuck. It's all the way down to the grandkids now. We're all the can do Dillons because one of our family values was we can do it. We're the positive people. We're going to put our best effort into it. We can do. And that's a really powerful thing to be able to pass down the generations. It guides a lot of our choices and it guides how we feel about ourselves as an extended family. The same can be true with whatever your values are. If you talk about it, think about it. If it's something that you pass down with pride, you think about legacy as a family and as an organization. Values are one of the most intangible but powerful things you can really pass down. And that's something that doesn't, you can't just write it on a piece of paper. You have to live it.
Absolutely. And you're right. First, you have to clarify those values before you can live by them. But having a powerful culture and living by those values, it's like programming the autopilot. It has to be done deliberately, continuously over time for it to be an effective force for your family, for the culture of your organization that you want to be a part of. And you have a powerful argument that you believe it's easier to hold yourself accountable to your principles, to your values 100% of the time than 98% of the time. I've seen this in my life as well. Many of us have convinced ourselves that we're able to break our own personal values or rules just this once. We justify small choices, right? And the voice in our head says something like, look, I know it's a general rule or a value that I live by. Most people shouldn't do it, but this is an extenuating circumstance. Just this once is okay. Why is that not a good practice or a mindset to have?
I love this example from the book, and I love that connected with you. It's because with good intentions, we can kind of talk ourselves out of whatever our kind of integrity code is, whatever we stand for. Because just this once, how is it going to matter? And I'll just give you an example. Just this once, oh, I didn't get a receipt for that expense at work. I'm just going to manufacture something and I don't remember the exact amount. Just this once, does it really matter? Just this once, am I going to not tell my spouse why I'm home late from work? I went out for drinks with the guys after work, but I don't think she's going to appreciate that. So just this once, I want to tell her. any of these individual decisions that we allow ourselves, because just this once is not that often, right? It's just every now and then, and 98% of the time I'm on the straight and narrow. The problem is that how do you know which are, if that's okay for you to have extenuating circumstances that change what you stand for, what your values are, what things are important to you. How do you know which are the 2% of the time that it's okay? And in reality, it's never 2%. That's the thing. Once you start down the path of making decisions just this once, you're here now. And you know what? Nothing bad happened from whatever that small just this once was. So the next time something like that comes up, okay, just this once, it's probably fine. It didn't, nothing bad happened from that. And a series of decisions just this once can just lead you to a very different place. I like to give the example of somebody like Lance Armstrong, great athlete who just this once, whatever he said, the first time he did whatever he did to gain an advantage was probably something small. Just this once I will do it because everyone's doing it. I've justified it. It's equaling the playing field. One decision leads to another, leads to another. You just this once yourself into a very different place. And so Clay said, and I believe him, decide what you stand for and then stand for it all the time. It's just easier in your life. You don't have to be deciding what are the extenuating circumstances that make just this once worth it this time.
And it suckers you in, and you don't see where the path is ultimately headed, like you stated, or the full cost that that choice entails. And none of those things, when they first happen, feels like a life changing decision. The marginal costs are almost always fairly low at the start, but each one of those decisions can roll up into a much bigger picture, turning that into a kind of person that you never wanted to be. And this really speaks to the trap of marginal thinking, which affects both business decisions and personal integrity.
The theory of marginal cost is, again, really sort of simply explained as you said, you did that well, is that businesses make decisions based just on the marginal cost of the decision, not necessarily thinking about the full long-term picture. It's sort of a short-term decision. Are we going to spend money this or not? Well, the marginal cost is not that bad on this. Let's spend the money on this. Or the marginal cost of doing that would be negative, so we're not going to do that. Some years ago, some decades ago, there was no small town in America that I know of where Friday night, everybody crowded into their Blockbuster store, wandering around looking for videos to rent for the weekend so they could have the cool thing of watching videos at home. And Blockbuster was a fabulously successful and profitable business because they counted on the fact that too many of us would take out a video on Friday night. It was due back Monday morning, or I think even Monday before the start of business. So you had to get it back by, before 9 a.m. Too many of us didn't get it back on time and had to pay late fees. So their business model was incredibly profitable because a lot of people, it sat in the front seat of the car. You couldn't remember where it was, or we didn't get around to getting it on time to get it back on Monday morning. So Blockbuster was very profitable and very successful at the time when this little upstart called Netflix was starting to come on the scene with a product that or service that was much less good for the average person, which was they would mail order you DVDs to watch when DVDs were sort of emerging as a competitor to VHS and then DVDs that Blockbuster had. And then you could have them as long as you wanted. You just couldn't get other ones until you sent it back. So you might have it for 3 weeks, and the only consequence was you didn't get to watch a new movie till you sent it back. But that was way less profitable as a model. And so at a famous annual shareholder meeting of Blockbuster, somebody said, are you going to do anything to compete with this little upstart Netflix? And they thought the cost for us to try to do that would be so much. It would eat into our business model now. Why would we do that? Why would the marginal cost of making that decision would be bad for our profitability? So no, we're not going to do that. But what they didn't think about is what are the consequences down the line of doing or not doing that, making that decision? And the consequences were they little by little completely lost their competitive edge and then lost the market to that little upstart that they didn't want to bother with because the marginal costs seemed negative. You have to struggle with companies to not think about really plan for and think about the long-term consequences of the decisions. And the same thing is true for people. Most people, I sometimes start my section of talking about this with people say, raise your hand if you don't have integrity. Quick, raise your hand. No, everybody thinks they have integrity. None of us think we don't. And those people who end up in the place of not having integrity, people who make decisions that land them in jail, they never did that because there was a bright neon sign in the fork in the road. Left is the path of no integrity. Right is the path of integrity. It was in a series of marginal decisions. You think about the marginal cost that led them down that path. So the problem is you don't have these big warning signs that are like, if you do this, the consequences are horrible. You have to recognize that the small steps will eventually, small marginal steps will add up to something far more significant and make decisions taking into account the whole cost of that.
Such a profound concept. I wish more people got it. It makes perfect sense. Really hard to implement because, like you said, it's something that people just tell themselves it doesn't matter just this one time. It's not anything that they can see the connection to their future life on how that's really going to impact and maybe even change the course, change the direction, change the trajectory of their life. While many of us might default to measuring our lives by summary statistics, the number of people that follow us, number of awards we have, the amount of money we've accumulated, Clay realized the only metric that truly mattered to his life were that the individuals that he could help one by one to become better people. What are those key metrics that truly matter, in your opinion, in measuring a life?
So the answer to this question is very individual. So we've been working on the book with Clay. His metrics were going to be different than my metrics, but the power of this is asking yourself the question: what metrics are going to matter to me personally when I'm measuring my life? And when you think about it that way, it seems like it's a sort of silly thing to say. How will I measure my life? But as you pointed out, we measure everything. We measure followers, we measure clicks, we look at how quickly people like stuff, we measure our bank accounts. The level of things we measure is sort of off the chart. But taking a step back to say, well, how will I measure the success of my life? And if you don't think about it, you'll never get there. That's the point. If you don't have any kind of North Star that's trying to guide you. And for Clay, that answer was always surprising to people because he really was one of the most well known business thinkers in the world. But what he cared about, what his own personal measure was again, the number of individual people he helped. And it wasn't for other to impress other people. It was because he decided that was how he wanted to measure his life. I think if you don't think about it, you'll never have an answer. But I think if you take time to think about it, and it may change over time, it may evolve over time, then you're far more likely to get there than if you never do. I read a quote at some point that I thought was so interesting is hell is meeting the person you could have become on your last day on earth, recognizing who you should have been. Try not to do that. Try to decide who the person that you wanna become should be in your professional life, in your personal life, and in your kind of own integrity and moral code, and direct yourself that way. It won't be perfect, but if you don't know how to measure success or you don't even have a goal, you're never gonna be able to tell, "Did I get there?"
Great answer. And like you said, for each person, the specific metrics will be different, but the principles, they're the same. So, Karen, now that you've spent years sharing and discussing these ideas, what's something you wish you could tell your younger self or perhaps the next generation about living a meaningful life?
I wish I could tell myself that you can't and shouldn't sequence your life, meaning I was very heads down, college career. I took off almost no time to even get married. And I was very focused on my career. And my family was wonderful and loving. My husband's amazing and loving and supportive. But in my head, what was really happening was they will understand that my career is important. I need to get to this level. I'm really engaged by it. I had the ROI and all that stuff. And then when I get to X stage or Y stage, then I'll be a better daughter. I'll be a better friend. I'll be a better spouse. That you can't just turn to it at when you're ready. When okay, in my 40s, I'll really focus on this, or whenever. When my kids are teens, we'll have a better relationship. That you have to, like any good investment portfolio, you have to have many things going on at the same time for it to pay off over time. And your life is an investment portfolio. And so you can't put all of your money in the strategy of advancing your career or advancing in a career that doesn't satisfy you. Wish that I was better at that balance earlier. And that's part of why I ended up changing my life so dramatically, is to rebalance my portfolio. And it's been really happy. I have no regrets about having done it. I know I'm a better daughter. I hope I'm a better wife. I hope I'm a better mother, better friend, all those things that you sort of put to the wayside. So don't wait to do all those things. There's not, my friends and family will understand, should not cross through your head. You should be thinking about, I want to be the person I want to be as best as I can.
That's an important reminder for everyone. As we wrap up, what is one practical action you hope listeners take tomorrow that could shape their own journey toward a fulfilling life? You might have already said it, but perhaps there's another insight that you want to share.
I think just doing that resource allocation process, that's the one that really stopped me in my tracks after talking to Clay, because I would have told you what the strategy for my life was, and it would have been good things. It would have been all good things. How do I actually spend my discretionary, everybody has to earn a living, but my discretionary time and energy and focus? Was it on the things that I said were most important to me? And it really wasn't. And it was in my head. They'll understand and I'll get there and I will be. So to me, it's looking at your own physical resource allocation. And I'll tell you, the single biggest change in my own life from that decision on is that what I've changed, and I know people can feel it, is when I'm with you, I'm with you. And when I'm with my kids, I'm with my kids. It's not allowing myself to be bells and whistle distracted. It may not be all the time I wish it could be. It may not be perfect, but I am present. And I think that's a gift to give to people. And I'm grateful that I was able to recognize that in myself.
And the beauty of this approach for me is that it doesn't require you to overhaul your entire life overnight. It just requires that you to be more intentional about those choices you're already making every day. Thank you so much, Karen, for joining me today. Really appreciate our conversation. Remind our listeners how they get in contact with you and learn more about your work.
So KarenDillon.net is my website, and I'm always happy to hear from people. And I'm also really grateful to connect with people on LinkedIn.
Thank all of you for listening. Remember, Clay's legacy of helping people think more deeply about what truly matters is his lasting legacy to many of our listeners. And to all of you, remember, the question isn't just how are you going to measure your life, but how will you start living it starting today? I hope this episode has provided you with valuable insights. If it has, I ask you to share it with someone who would also benefit from it. If you've been enjoying and gaining knowledge from this podcast, then subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find all the previous episodes of the podcast and additional learning resources. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify and leave up to a 5-star review.